You know what they say about champions, right? Winning games when we don't play well. All right, welcome back to American Blues Podcast. Let's talk about Chelsea, Bournemouth 1-0. Of course, a little bit of exaggeration at the beginning. We're definitely not champion quality, but what is good news is this is a game that last season, the previous season, we would have either tied or lost, and we got almost there, but we dug it out, had some key saves, clinical finish, and able to keep a clean sheet afterwards. And so a win is a win, 3 points, most important thing. So let's start with the starting lineup. It was pretty much what I expected. The only question was who's going to play in right back and then who's going to make for it in midfield. And our answer was Disasi in right back, which made me very nervous, especially with the pace that Bournemouth had on the left side. And then Vega getting his really Premier League debut in the central midfield role. So I was curious to see how he would do. And it kind of turned out exactly how I felt. You know, number one, let's start with the positive first because there's always too much negativity around the club. So we have to celebrate the points and win when we can get them. So number one, positives. Now, I have been very critical of Sanchez for the past 2 years, basically. But this season, game by game, he is showing more composure, key saves. And you know what? Credit where credit is due. He is stepping up. He has not put a foot wrong, really. I mean, he had maybe one wayward long pass, and that was it. Didn't really give up any chances. He was left high and dry by Fofana for that penalty. There was honestly not much he could do. Like, what was he supposed to do? Just swing by and let the guy go in free goal? No, he had to try to make some kind of challenge. So I can't blame that on him. What I can say is great save, but also very bad penalty by Bournemouth's new striker who looked nervous as hell when he was taking it. And then, of course, Sanchez also had several key saves. And the first half, second half, he had save after save. I think it was at least 3 big saves. He was really strong in the air, good on corners too. So pretty much everything that you want from the goalie, which is saving shots, saving penalties, strong with their hands, and good passing out. So Sanchez, I would say, near like 9, 10 out of 10 performance. Great for him. And then, of course, several more key players I thought had great games. Number one was Caicedo in the midfield. Because Vega was so nervous in the first half, you could tell he's still not really used to that position. He doesn't know when to step out, when to step back. Vega also doesn't have the best progressive passing, so a lot of that came down to Caicedo carrying the ball forward and then also running back into defense. In the second half, he even tried to go back into right back a little bit to cover off, Disasi and Fofana. So I think Caicedo had a great game. He did have a very shaky start to the season, but we're starting to see the real Caicedo start to play, and the sooner the better, because I think he's one of the most important people on our team. And then, of course, the 2 standout players in the second half, Jadon Sancho. My goodness, United, like, what were you thinking giving this player up for $20 million? Man, he made the absolute difference. For sure, player of the match. This moment he came on the left side, he made an impact with almost every touch of the ball. It's really interesting because he's not like a speed demon. He's not a Mudryk or Madueke or even Sterling or even Neto, where his whole game is dependent on 1v1. He's very clever with the ball. He's got incredible close control. He knows when to draw the defender near, when to beat him, when to hold them off. And then I think my favorite quality of his, which very few of our other players have except for maybe like João Felix and Palmer, is that he knows what to do with the ball in the final third. He's very much a link-up player. He knows that killer final pass, that pass into the final third that's so important for us breaking down defenses. And he did that with almost every touch. I think he had at least 5 great through balls in the final third. Most of them were to Cucurella to run a cut back on. One was to João Felix, and of course the final one was to Nkunku, which he scored on. So Jadon Sancho, if he can play like this, man, what a player. I love that we have so many different styles of wingers. We have Neto and Madueke who are just 1v1 speed crossing. And then if that doesn't work, then we have a player like Sancho who's really technical, really good at link up. And yeah, I just want to see more of this from him. I know he can be inconsistent sometimes, so he's got to show that he can do this game after game after game. But if he can, man, this is like the bargain signing of the season for sure. And another big shout out is to Christopher Nkunku. I know he hasn't gotten much game time. His injury record is very worrying. He kind of seems like a glass cannon where He's very clinical. He knows what to do in the final third, but he just cannot stay healthy enough to get a run of consistent games. And he's a very different profile striker than Jackson. I don't think Nkunku's really a true striker. He doesn't play well back to goal. He's not a great link up person, but what he can do is finish. I thought the ball from Sancho was great, but Nkunku had a lot to do. He had 3 defenders on him that he had to beat and muscle out and hit it into the corner, and he did it with style. The problem with Jackson is that up until the final third, he's great, but in that box, he's just not clinical. He had 3 huge chances this game. One of them I thought he took really well. It was just a little bit too central at the goalie. But then the other 2, he just needs to keep his balance and stay on his feet and hit an actual shot. And he couldn't do that for either of the other ones. And so that's something that Nkunku adds to the team. If he can stay healthy, I've always said Nkunku, I think, is probably our most clinical finisher on the team. It's just a matter of, can we get him enough game time to make a difference, and can he stay healthy enough to make a difference? And then another big positive, I think, it still goes out to Maresca. The starting lineup didn't really work. First half, we were very terrible. But then, of course, unlike last season where we somehow were really good in the first half and then every second half sucked, we seem to always get better at halftime. And that's a really good sign of a good manager. He recognizes what doesn't work. He's making impact changes at the right time. My probably only criticism for him is probably keeping Jackson on a little bit too long. I think Nkunku could come on, a good 20 minutes earlier and maybe would have had even more of an impact. And we would finish the game with a little bit more comfort and style. Kudos out to Maresca for recognizing what didn't work in the first half, making the necessary changes. In the second half, we were completely dominant and just looked so much better. Now, the only thing is going forward, I want the whole 90 minutes to be good, not just one half at a time, not just trying to fix what doesn't work in the first half. I think he needs to work on getting the starting 11 correctly and then making good changes if things aren't working during the game. Another positive, set piece defending. Bournemouth, especially second half, they put on some tall players. And what have we said over the past few seasons? Our set piece defending has been very poor and very suspect. And today I actually felt like we were doing very well. I don't think there was a set piece where I felt nervous. There wasn't some egregious marking where Enzo's marking their tallest player. None of that was happening. We were covering the front post, middle, the back post. Sanchez was coming out and collecting balls when he needed to. He had a really good punch out in the second half. Our set piece defending was on point today. We just need to keep that going. I think part of it is also because our defense is finally really getting settled. We have Fofana Colwell in a good partnership. We have Cucurella. And then, normally we would have Malagusto or Reece James. Today we had Disasi. And then Tosin came on. But still, I think as time goes on, our set piece defending will only get better and better. And I want to see more of that. And then the flip side is I want to see us having more of a threat on our set pieces. Really, I don't see much of a plan on our set pieces apart from just try to hit it into the box. But we finally have some good crossers in Cole Palmer, Enzo, Neto. We have plenty of good crosses. Even João Felix is a good crosser. So hopefully with time, our offensive set pieces can get better too, and we can get some goals from there, because I think in order to dominate in the Premier League, you have to have some type of threat from set pieces. All right, now, of course, this game still had plenty of negatives, especially the first half. What I said in the beginning of the video, which is I was very nervous about Disasi starting on right back, and you can see why. I like Disasi as a player, as a person. He has a lot of passion. You can't really ever blame a player for that, but his natural ability is not speed. And you can tell against a fast left wing of Bournemouth, he was just getting, burnt again and again. It got to the point where I felt bad for him because he didn't know when to step up. He didn't know when to step back. Even when he was back, he didn't have the pace to, follow any runs. There were several times where he tried to cut out the ball and got caught in no man's land, and the person he was supposed to be marking just blew right past him in the big hole that he left behind. So I think Disasi had a horrendous game. I was glad to see him come off at halftime because it was just not working. He was way too much of a liability. Second big negative, which was in the first half, you could tell Vega is still nervous. I like Vega too. He's tall, he's strong, he's fast. But unfortunately, he's not really like the progressive passer, and he doesn't have the technical ability that Enzo does. So with him and Caicedo pairing, a lot of that creativeness came down to Caicedo, and I thought he did a good job. But Vega, the first half, was again caught in the wrong position a lot of times, not tracking runs. And when he did get the ball, he didn't have very good progressive passing at all. So second half, he did get better as the team got a bit more settled. You could tell he got more into the game, and a lot of the errors went away. So I think with time, Vega has a very, very high ceiling. He just needs time. He needs time on the training ground to really learn his role as a left back and then inverting or playing in central defensive midfield. And then I think overall, the biggest problem with the first half is our long balls to our wings just didn't go anywhere. Our long balls to Jackson didn't go anywhere. Mainly it was that, we would get the ball out to the players that we wanted the ball to get to, whether it was Madueke or even Palmer sometimes, or Jackson, Neto. But unfortunately, they either had really bad first touches or their pass right after that first touch was wayward and we would immediately lose the ball again. And then after that, we just weren't winning any second balls. And so we had a really tough time progressing the ball forward. And again, we ran into the same issue of Cole Palmer having to drop really deep to try to get the ball to create something. But unfortunately, he can't really pass to himself. So somebody needs to help him out in terms of getting the ball, turning, and looking for that forward pass. And we just weren't doing a very good job of that. And again, Madueke kind of had a very quiet game on the wing. He's not the best back to goal player. Like, his role isn't really to come back, get the ball from Sanchez on like a long pass and then pass it off to Palmer or someone else and then immediately turn around. Like, that should be his game, but he was not doing a very good job at it yesterday. And then when he did get some isolation for 1v1, he just wasn't really beating his man, and he kept trying to cut inside. He had a few shots that just went absolutely nowhere. So he had a very poor game, in my opinion. And then on the other side, Pedro Neto was also pretty much equally as ineffective. You could tell he has a ton of pace. He's willing to track back, but unfortunately, he's not a good outpass when we have the ball in our goalie. Like, he's just not really tall enough. He doesn't have that strength to chest the ball, control it, and then pass it off. And then we just weren't having a very good time getting him the ball past the last line of defense where he could run into it and get across in, just because we were missing that really good progressive passer in Enzo, and Vega and Caicedo just weren't finding him very well. And then finally, Jackson. There were several times where Jackson's biggest strength is getting the ball, turning, and moving it forward, and he also wasn't finding a very good time doing that either. And of course, we know Jackson's not very clinical in the final third, so that was another issue. Now, how do we solve these things going forward? I think maybe this is one of those times where it's just an off game. When we look good going forward, we look really good. And then unfortunately, when our game plan of 1v1s, touchline wingers doesn't work, right now our plan B with those players just doesn't work very well. But like I said earlier in the video, I like that our subs have very different profiles. João Felix is very different than Jackson. Sancho is very different from Neto or Madueke. So I think when plan A doesn't work, our plan B is looking really good right now because it's a completely different plan. And there's so many different things you could do with João Felix, Jadon Sancho. You could have João Felix play as a 9. You could have Nkunku play as a 9. You could have Sancho on the left. You could have him on the right. You could have Pedro Neto on the right. There's so many different things that you could do. And then, of course, Palmer has a completely free role. He can play anywhere on the pitch and be good. So I like that we are able to change things up, give the defense something else to look at, and if having an impact sub like Sancho is incredible. And of course, final negative, when the moment I saw Anthony Taylor refereeing the game, I went, oh, God damn it, not again. And you could tell, I don't know what the hell he was thinking with his yellows. We set a new record for the number of yellows during a Premier League game. I think it ended up being 14 players. I don't know if that counts the 2 coaching staff that got yellow card on either side, but absolutely ridiculous. Some of those yellows were some of the softest challenges I've seen. We had Fofana in the first half where he barely brushed the player's face, got a yellow, no reason. And then Colwell got the ball on his challenge in the second half and still got a yellow. As far as I'm concerned, if you get the ball as a defender and you're not doing a crazy 2-footed lunging challenge, it's fine. That's part of the game. You should be able to run behind someone and tackle and get the ball. Fine, they're going to fall over. But if you get the ball first, that's the most important thing. Should never have been in yellow. And then João Felix at the end of the second getting another yellow made no sense. Yeah, Anthony Taylor. And then, and then some of the Bournemouth players were on their first yellows already, and they would make another challenge, either hold up play or something that could have easily deserved a second yellow and a red. And Taylor did absolutely nothing. It was like he was super excited to give the first yellow, and then he had absolutely no interest in giving the second yellow to any player. I don't understand him as a ref. I think he's horrendous. I think he's the worst ref in the Premier League. Every time he refs a Chelsea game, I get nervous. And yeah, and he did not disappoint. He was still just as awful as other times, but at least he did not give us a red card like every other game he's repped. So thank God. So I think overall takeaway from this game is that no, we did not play well. First half was atrocious. We need to work on making the first half better. Going forward, unfortunately, I don't think Disasi should be playing right back ever. I think it would be far better if we played Achipong or Fofana in right back, to someone with more speed and pace and technical ability. And then we have Tosin to put into the midfield, and God forbid we have Badiashile also, but I don't really want to see him in central defense anymore either. We really desperately need Reece James or Malagusto back. It's just unfortunate that at such an important position we have two injury-prone players, but hopefully soon we can get them back and that won't be an issue. And then in midfield, we need Enzo back. We need that passer in midfield so Palmer doesn't have to constantly run back and get the ball and try to be the only creative person on the team. So this team still needs a little bit more balance, but I think the ingredients are there. We look really good in attack, especially with Jadon Sancho and João Felix and Nkunku. I think those players deserve more game time, especially if our initial plan of Neto, Madueke, Jackson isn't working out. So I think there is a lot of positives to look forward to. This is a game that we 100% would have lost in the previous seasons, and we managed to get out and win, and that is a very, very important thing. We have to be able to grind out wins when we don't play well. But hopefully soon we'll start to see some better football. All right, see you guys after the next game.